All right, RTD Live Talk. Excited to be back for another live stream and having a return guest, Mr. Mark Moss. Mark, how you doing this afternoon, my friend?
Oh, well, I'm doing pretty good, all things considering.
Yeah.
With the markets in a state of meltdown, but yeah, we're doing good.
Okay, let me got too much stuff going on my end. Let me cut down some stuff. All right, so we are good. All right, so as always, man, like I have a gang of articles in front of me, and I'm sure you're keeping an eye on the same exact thing. And so before we get started, I want to welcome everybody to this live stream. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them directly in the chat. Or, as always, I would love to hear your voice. If the phone lines work, you guys can give us a call, and we'll try to get you on air so that you can get your questions answered. So, Mark, very first thing, is this the beginning, or are we in the midst of that monetary reset that every alternative media gentleman has been speaking about for quite some time now?
Well, it's the beginning and we're in the midst. It's both, right? I mean, it's amazing how fast this has happened and progressed. So, I mean, we're literally like a week into this and like the world's like over, Yeah. So yeah, we're both. We're in the beginning and we're in the midst.
Yeah. Now, from what you're seeing, I saw actually today, a billionaire investor was basically advising Trump and every mainstream media picked it up saying that we need to shut down the economy, period, for 30 days. Based upon the information you have, do you think there is an actual window where we could dial back completely and it would help? Or is this something that has to ultimately just run its course regardless of a time frame that comes from our leadership?
Yeah, I was just looking at the time frame. Sorry. So we're like 19 days into this, right? So from the market high. So we're down 33% in 19 days. So that's how fast it's gone. And you can look back all the way to the 1929 crash, and we've never seen anything like this. Yeah. Back to your question, should we shut everything down, I guess was the question based off of this?
Or time frame, because they say 2 weeks, take 2 weeks off, and then now, somebody's saying 30 days. And
I'm gonna be honest. I was pretty skeptical. Unfortunately, a lot of people in the world have their tinfoil hats on, or whatever you want to call them, conspiracy theories. But because we've been made that way, because we're constantly lied to, because it's all there, it makes us so skeptical. And I'm 45 years old. Mm-hmm. And I tell you that because I grew up, my dad was a Vietnam vet, my grandfathers were vets, and I grew up at a time where we had a Cold War with Russia. Yeah. I was alive when the Berlin Wall was up and Germany was split into two. And I remember thinking as a kid, like, oh my gosh, what if I was spending the night at a friend's house and then they put the wall up overnight and I was on the wrong side? And I remember having those thoughts. And I remember growing up and seeing people risking their lives to escape Cuba to get to Florida. So one thing that's always been on my mind is martial law. I've been very afraid of that. And my parents told me when I was a little kid that fences work two ways. They keep people out and they keep people in. And so, all this talk about building this border wall, I'm not really a big fan of that because I don't want a wall keeping me in. And so anyway, my whole life, I've been just weary of this. And I set the stage a little bit to tell you that, I'm super afraid of martial law. I was afraid we might see it when Obama was in his last election term, when he was leaving office. We had the whole Black Lives Matter, and cities around the world or country were erupting. And I thought maybe we could see it then. And I told my wife then we should leave the country if that happens. Yeah. And now we're going into that again. And I told my wife again, maybe we should leave the country. But now, like, where would you go in the world? Right. So anyway, I set the stage to tell you that I've been very skeptical of this, but I'm at the point now, to get to your question, I'm at the point now where I think everybody needs to be shutting down. Mm-hmm. And as of yesterday, I've put my family on lockdown because I've looked at the math. And so everything I do, I try to separate fact from fiction, or not fiction, but fact from opinion, I should say. Okay. And, a couple of weeks ago, my opinion was very different because the facts were something different, right? We had a very low amount of people that were infected and dead. As that's scaling, we're starting to get a better idea of what that looks like. And specifically, back to your question about the economy, we're in for a world of hurt here, like a world of hurt. And I mean, like hurt like no one's ever seen before, and I'm scared for everybody. And schools are closed down, so people can't work. And if people can't work, the average, I think it's like 70% of people don't have $400 for an emergency expense.
Yeah. Now,
Like,
Mark, 1 second. I don't mean to cut you off. We have a call question. Let's take this question, then we can get back to that if you don't mind. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
I'm calling from Apollo Beach, Florida.
Apollo Beach, Florida. What's on your mind this afternoon?
Well, he's talking about martial law and, what the deal is. You know how the sheriff of Nottingham got his name?
Mm-hmm. No, I do not.
Well, the sheriff of Nottingham, his last name was Sheriff. That's why they call all these people sheriff now.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. So do you personally believe martial law is coming yourself?
Yes. Yes, it's going to be very, very bad, especially for elderly people.
Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah.
I do agree.
Yeah, I agree too. So maybe not martial law where it's have to be forced and imposed. Maybe we can.
It's also going to affect the price of everything, and it'll all be over with by the 10th of April.
By the 10th of April.
Why do you say that?
Yeah, it'll be over with by the 10th of April. You heard it on your show live, and you said it'll be over with by the 10th of April. Yes, it will be over with by the 10th of April.
And that is because of what?
Well, that's the end of the show.
The end of the show.
These people are all actors, and everybody's got a script. Some people do talk shows. Some people's president. Some people are in Congress being bad actors.
Hey, well, April 10th. If it is on April 10th, that would be a good prophecy. It seems like that. But I appreciate you calling in, my friend. Thank you.
Okay.
Be good.
Silver is going to be 500. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right. All right.
I hope he's right. And I want to do everything that we can to try to get there. So back to what I was saying, I've been afraid of martial law, and I don't want them to take away our powers because every time, or our freedoms, because every time we have a crisis like this, we lose more freedom. 9/11, we lost more freedom. Mm-hmm. So if we could all do the responsible thing and just stay home, they wouldn't have to exercise a new law that gives them more power.
Mm-hmm. But I think they want to do it anyway. I think
they do too. I think they do too. And like I said, I've been very skeptical of this whole thing. But when you look at the math of how fast this thing is accelerating, the difference of a week or two makes a massive difference. So I was reading the data, and forgive my numbers, I don't know them exactly, but if you took like a sample size of 10,000 people at the rate that it's accelerating, if it took 30 days to get everyone locked down, you could have like 10 million cases. But if you got it done in 18 days, you only had 150,000 cases. And if there's any hope out there for us, it's that we see the downside of this pretty quickly, because there's a lot of employers right now that are, let's hold off on layoffs. Let's wait and see what happens. And if we can start to see the downside in a couple weeks or a month from now, I think they'll hold off on those layoffs and people can keep their jobs. If it takes longer than that, I'm afraid. So I decided to go ahead and put myself, our family, into quarantine, not because I'm afraid of catching it and dying, but because I want the economy to recover as quickly as possible. And hopefully if we can exercise that on our own, maybe they don't have to pass those laws. They may want to. That's a different conversation.
Yeah. So we have another call. And so a part of the live chat today is to get as many calls answered as we can. And so I want to make sure people get a chance to ask you questions. So for those who are interested and you want to ask a question, feel free to do so. And so we do have a call. Let me make sure I get this on here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mike, it's Dan from Vancouver, Washington. How you guys doing?
Doing good, Dan. How you doing? What's on your mind this afternoon? What's your question or your thought you want to share?
Ooh, get a little bit of feedback from you, but I was just going to say that I don't know how we're not going to get martial law, because how else are they going to stop people from leaving their house? I mean, you can't find them if they're not working. And at the very least, they're going to have to send military to be running up and down the streets just to intimidate people, to keep them in their homes, because the thing is spreading so fast. Mm-hmm. So that's just a no-brainer now. Whether or not that gets out of control is, as far as like a question or food for thought for your guys' conversation, is what is going to lead? What is the catalyst from the military intimidating people to stay in their quarantines to maybe something worse happening, like the military confiscating people who are sick and taking them away from their families and putting them in some kind of arena or quarantine or something like China, something really draconian, which I think a lot of us citizens like to think that our own military wouldn't do that to us here.
Right.
But, I don't know. That's just some food for thought for your guys' conversation. Thank you.
Actually, appreciate your call, my friend. We will touch on that. So, Mark, do you think there's a possibility of, martial law is one thing we do not want to occur. I've had 2 or 3 people, one from the UK referenced that as of this Friday, they're going to shut down, declare martial law. And so everything will probably come in from Europe, and we're behind the curve and doing and being very reactive. And so I don't necessarily see military boots on the ground to patrol the U.S. because I just don't see there being enough military troops to do such. So law enforcement, I remember years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, there being a push to militarize a lot of police departments with equipment and guns and ammo. And was that all a part of what was to come, you think, or what?
Well, what was this all building up to this? Let me stop before we get to that question. But to what he said, food for thought. We have examples, right? So we see China obviously did that draconian measures, right? Hauled people off, as he was saying, pulled them away from their family. They went around and welded doors and boarded up doors to keep people in their houses. Okay, that's how far they went. Yeah. But then we can look at like South Korea or Singapore. That's basically been able to eradicate it like almost quickly. Now, Singapore is very small. It's like the size of like Columbus, Ohio. It's tiny, but also because people there complied. People there were respectful. People stayed in their homes like they were supposed to. Mm-hmm. So will we be like China and not listen and get forced into it? Or would we be more like Singapore and voluntarily do it so we don't have to get the boots on the head? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be up to us. Now, like I said, they've kind of made us crazy. We're always suspecting these conspiracies. Yeah. And I believe a lot of that's their fault because they have been so shady on what they do. But if we can take this upon ourselves, which, like I said, I've decided to do, maybe we don't need the boots on the head. That's my hope. Would it come down to being dragged out of your house and boots on the head? If that's the last ditch effort, then yeah, why wouldn't it? Right. I mean, of course it would go that far.
Oh man, I think there will be a lot of resistance from Americans, given the fact that I believe the push to de-arm the population was well underway. It just didn't work out as planned because more people are running to the store to get ammunition like never before. So I can imagine there being a lot of resistance. But we have another call here. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's your thought?
Hey, what's going on, my guys? This is Miles from CY.
How you doing, my friend? You got a question or a thought you want to share?
I actually have something on my mind, and I have a question. The first one is the question: what does the average guy that's hearing this for the first time, living week to week, the average blue-collar guy that's just hearing it, what does he do? How can he stay above, or how can he survive? What do you see? Some of us maybe a little bit older, or, it's not as easy to go out and go back to school or learn a new skill, or we got families. Mm-hmm. How do we come out on the other side of this without being totally, just taken under? And also, as far as martial law goes, I can see that happening. I think they're slowly locking each place down area by area, so it won't be such a shock. Mm-hmm. But right now, they're talking about sending everybody money. Their kids are home from school, so they're basically taking away any reason you have to leave the house. You don't have to work. Don't wait. We'll bring you food. We'll deliver it to you. Just stay here until we need you guys to work, or head into some labor construction camp, to pay off that debt that you had from years ago, that your kids would be working. But I don't think it's going to take. I think it's going to be a civil war because, unlike other countries, this country, a lot of citizens are armed. You don't find it in those countries where you see a lot of them locked down, Yeah. Other than that, I don't think it's going to work. I think they're going to try it, but I think, just with the nature of people here, we're too used to being free to do what we want, or at least we have a perception, and with that perception is destroyed and taken away, and, it comes to it, I can't go see Nana because, some guy standing over there and my grandmother's sick. It's going to be an issue, plain and simple. But I appreciate it, guys. I love to hear your feedback on it. I hope you guys are all right. Come through the other side, too.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for calling in. Great question there. Mark, So the first part, go ahead and touch on that one where, what can someone do through this? Because we've been forced at home. Entrepreneurship is going to be key, but a lot of people are not used to work either being creative and bringing their gifting to the front line. So what are your thoughts? What are some suggestions you put out there?
Yeah. So as that's like I said, that's my fear, right? People are out of work, and so I want to get this get through this as soon as possible. But what should they do? Well, they need to learn how to make money from home. Mm-hmm. And as you said, right, they're going to have to learn new skills. And so this is I like to try to break things down into the most simple form. And so everybody needs to understand that you get paid for the value that you provide.
Yeah.
So people think, oh, I've been, why aren't the warehouse workers at Amazon paid more? Well, they're getting paid for the value that they're providing, right? They could have robots fill those packages, for example, right? Yeah. But the more value you provide, you make more money. And so anybody that's listening, if you want to make more money, find how you can provide more value. Mm-hmm. I had this big conversation. I told you I locked my family down yesterday, and I had this big conversation with my wife, and I have a teenage daughter today. And I said, it's times like these that people are made. This is the dividing point. And unfortunately, most people are going to lose everything, but some people can build something enormous. And so to answer your question, they haven't been used to being creative. They're going to have to learn new skills. So, today, and we've never been in a better place in time to do this, because today a 13-year-old kid with an Instagram account can make $1 million.
Right.
So you need to learn how to make money from home. How do you do that? Well, you can provide services. So most services can be provided from home these days, the gig economy. So that could be whether that's accounting or customer service or data admin or graphic design, web design, video editing, you name it. You can do all those remotely. Mm-hmm. There's global marketplaces like Upwork, upwork.com. You can go on there and start bidding on jobs and doing that stuff from home right now. Yeah. Anything that you don't have to be physically present for, you can find those jobs on Upwork. I don't care if it's an attorney or legal, whatever, that you can find it. So you're going to need to find new skills. One, two, you can sell products. So, find products that people are buying. People are going to need to have stuff delivered, right? So, you can buy and sell products. There's information marketing. So you can do, there you go. You can do information marketing. So, for example, I have a newsletter, and people pay to subscribe to my newsletter. And so I produce that from home, and I get paid for that. Mm-hmm. And you could write a newsletter on the new knitting techniques, the new knit this of the month. It could be about a health newsletter. I mean, there's all types of options there. So find what your passions are. So those are 3 different ways that you can make money online or from home, I should say.
Right. I agree. And so one of my biggest proponents that I've been working on the last couple of months is another channel I've started called Giftpreneur, where I try to encourage people that, I believe personally, this is from a spiritual standpoint, that everybody was born with a unique gifting. Now, what that is, it's up to us to uncover. But once you find your gift, it's something of value that the world needs. Therefore, find a way to deploy that gift, and you'll never be not wanted for something. So, of course, it's kind of hard in the midst of a crisis. But it looks like we might have some time on our hands to actually dig deep and to uncover some things that we're actually naturally good at. If you're good at something, somebody will pay you to take it off their plate more than likely. So
yeah. So this anybody can get this book for free. Yeah. Just go to Expert Secrets. You can I don't know if you have a link or something you want to give, but basically anyone can get this book for free. Just pay the shipping. And this is basically what he's saying right here is everybody's an expert in something and figure it out. And an easy way is just look at your browsing history. What are you reading online? What are your apps? Like, where do you spend your time? And that might give you an indication of where you're at. But at the end of the day, maybe you could do video editing from home, but you don't know how to do video editing. Well, learn. Yeah. Learn how to do video editing, right? We don't want to take on the victim mentality. We need to take on the I need to do whatever I need to do to survive mentality. And maybe it's time for you to learn a new skill, and you might be 50 or 60 years old, but that's okay. Like, we live a long time these days. At 60 years old, you can reinvent yourself. You just have to just have to do it.
That's very true. Now, I want to dive a little further. So as always, feel free to give us a call, and we'll get you on here and get your thoughts answered or whatnot. But the Federal Reserve right now is in the midst of creating and being willing to be very accommodative to every corporation, person, institution, you name it, to the tunes of $1 trillion. I think 500 in the morning, 500 in the evenings for the repo market activity. Like always, once they start, it's hard to stop. what are your thoughts on that? Is this the beginning of the end of the Federal Reserve note? Will they actually run themselves into the ground, or that's a lot to unpack? What are your thoughts? What's your initial thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think they committed $1 trillion a day into the repo market.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's even bigger. And look how fast that's escalated, right? And they're going to blame all this on the coronavirus popping being the pinprick on the economy. But the reality is the repo market seized up, was it, I don't know, 6 months ago now?
Mm-hmm.
And it started as like 50 billion, and then it was 100 billion and 150, and now it's $1 trillion.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what that means, we won't go into all that, but just know that that's the liquidity. That's what's keeping the banking sector alive right now. So it needed 50 billion, and now it's $1 trillion a day to keep that from seizing up. So just know that. As far as to kind of go into the Fed and is this going to be the end? So basically, what happened is in 1971 is a very pivotal point in history, because in 1971 we severed the tide of the gold, and for 5,000 years gold was always money. We're 50 years into this fake money experiment, and every crash that we've had in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000, 2008, 2011 is this fake money trying to deleverage. And every time it tries to deleverage because it's fake, they pump more money in to get it back up. And then it tries to crash again, and they pump it back up, and it crashes again, they pump it back up. And to give you an idea of how much worse this is getting, in 2008, if you guys can remember, it's not that long ago, basically overnight, the banking sector collapsed. And they said the banks would run out of money if they didn't bail them out, right?
Yeah.
And they bailed them out with $700 billion of TARP. That was the TARP, $700 billion. So in 2008, it took $700 billion, which is a big number.
Yeah.
To date, right now, they've already put in $2 trillion, and it hasn't even done anything.
No.
There'll probably be 10 trillion in. So it was 700 billion in 2008. We're looking at potentially 10 trillion today. So how much further can they go? So I think this could finally be the end of this. And I don't want to say me. I think this will be the end of the banking system, the financial system as we know it. Mm-hmm. And yesterday, I think it was the president of Credit Suisse, one of the largest banks in the world. Mm-hmm. He posted and he said that, look, we are damned if we do, damned if we don't. If we don't print to infinity to save this economy, it's going to crash. But if we do print, we're going to destroy money as we know it. But we have no choice but to print, so we're going to destroy money. He said the only outcome after this is either gold or digital money. That's what he said, point blank.
That's interesting, because we're not the only nation in the same predicament, and so every nation has to cut. So I've looked at the charts yesterday. Every central bank, every of the G7, especially, they're in the process of cutting their interest rates, basically incentivizing borrowing at a time where all the people who would typically borrow will be probably unemployed, and the corporations are in dire straits now. And so everyone's going to begin printing to stimulate. And now it looks like we're going to be globally stimulated out of this current paper digital paradigm. And then we're having issues with people actually being able to source gold and silver at the same time. So the demand is high, supply is short. I'm hearing the miners are being, the mining sector is a little bit problematic due to the current pricing. So at this current moment, we're in the middle of March, and this thing hasn't really even began. Will we get out of this current month with there being some type of easing of some kind, and then they're going to issue $1,000 one time to the people, but billions to the corporations. I don't think that's going to fly over too well. Do you think?
Well, it's certainly not, but it's the way it is. And, I posted yesterday, I think on Twitter, and I said, everybody was afraid with Bernie Sanders being elected and bringing socialism, but socialism is here. Yeah. Like anybody who thinks we have capitalism isn't looking at anything. All this is because of socialism. So, for example, they're going to bail out the airlines. Well, the airlines have taken all their money and spent it on share buybacks, buying back their stock so that their CEOs can get huge bonuses. Yeah. Instead of saving it for a rainy day like today. Right. Yeah. And the oil industry needs to get bailed out. And the oil industry is in hot water because they borrowed so much fake money that now they can't afford that. But whose fault is that? Right. Yeah. And so, it should be going to little guy. Yeah, they're going to send out $1,000 or $2,000. What's that going to do? It's not going to do much. But unfortunately, what I see probably happening is people asking for more socialism without realizing this is exactly what got us into this problem in the first place.
Yeah.
Capitalism would just let them die.
Yeah. And that's what I think would be ideal. Let the big corporations that were financially irresponsible die, stimulate the workers. So, for example, because of this health scare, and that's where I get into the whole, like, so you mentioned tinfoil. I actually have a tinfoil hat because I like to go far left field with some crazy stuff sometimes, but I won't go there today. But just in playing out scenarios, because at this point, anything's possible, I personally believe. And so in a tip, if our leadership was really serious about helping out the people as opposed to keeping this current paradigm going, they should let all these corporations fail, stimulate the people who are being impacted because of their health first, put money into the hands of individuals and let them go out and choose to spend and pick which companies is worthy of being brought back into existence after all this unravels. And then, of course, I got my concerns about the Federal Reserve, how they're going to end up. But, 1,000 will just basically be the door opener, I believe, to what will come in midsummer, which that UBI. I like to call it UBA, Universal Basic Allowance, because it won't be income. You have to earn income. But do you think this is a door opener to UBA?
Well, for sure. It already is, right? I mean, I thought Andrew Yang was crazy for coming out talking about that stuff, but now here it is. And so he's probably looking like a genius all of a sudden. See, I knew you guys would love my ideas, right? But that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Now, will it continue on in perpetuity? We have no idea. It's just craziness, right? So think about this, right? Like, if they can just print money like it's nothing, then why even collect taxes?
Well,
why do they even need our taxes for? Why don't they just make all the money they need?
Yeah. So I think with them cutting taxes and extending the IRA and extending some things, that could turn into an indefinite situation as well down the line. And
I sure would hope so.
It'll thwart the central banking model, of course. But so let me ask you a question. This is a personal question. Trump. There's a lot of supporters that believe that Trump has a grand scheme plan behind all this, where he's deliberately putting the Fed in a tight position to get rid of the Fed and issue this and issue that and bring back, and all that stuff like that, because he has Andrew Jackson behind his desk and the history behind Andrew Jackson eliminating banks. Do you think Trump is that going to be that make America great guy again, or is he a part of the game?
Well, if he was really trying to do that, he would probably end up assassinated, right? Every president that's ever gone against the Fed has ended up dead. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't like to try to claim to be a Republican or a Democrat or whatever, because I can't fully identify with anybody. Mm-hmm. That being said, there's a lot of things that Trump has done that have been really good. He's really pushed back on China, really pushed back on Iran, really done some good, smart things there. I think there's a good chance, and I don't know if it's his doing, I don't know if I'm going to give him the credit, but I think there's a good chance we see the Fed kind of go away in a sense where money creation goes back to the government again. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what Abraham Lincoln tried to do, where he tried to create these greenbacks, and we call dollars greenbacks, but they were actually a different form of money back then. It was a government money as opposed to a Fed bank money. And so I think there's a good chance that we go back to that again, because why does the government owe the Fed money that they created out of thin air? Why doesn't the government just make money out of thin air and then we don't owe anybody? That makes way more. I mean, it none of it makes sense, but that makes more sense than the other one. Yeah.
Now, as a part of that very thought process, I can understand that completely, and it's no coincidence that I personally believe they don't want us to go back to anything tangible, whether it be paper. I think this health scare will probably really put the fear of people handling things as far as paper. It's going to scare the hell out of people. So they'll be willing to accept the digital rollout of whatever's coming. And I've already coined it as just the e-dollar, the electronic dollar that will be issued through the Treasury. And then to have Steve Mnuchin just hire Coinbase.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, will they give us something as far as a stimulus in the first couple months and then roll out a universal basic allowance in the form of the e-dollar, where you get it through your app and stuff like that. So that's a lot of the tinfoil stuff I went down the road with.
Well, it's not super tinfoil. I mean, you're kind of seeing how far it goes, right? I've been repeating a lot lately. The great Wayne Gretzky, the hockey legend, he always said, how are you so good? He said, well, I always skated to where the puck was going to be, not where it was. And so as investors, I try to think about that, right? Where is the puck going? Like what's happening today, and where does that mean in the future, right? So, you saw that they hired the guy from Coinbase. I mean, what does that tell you? Like, obviously, digital currency coming out pretty quickly here. Already, though, 90% of all transactions are already digital.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we already pretty much have digital money anyway.
Yeah,
I rarely use cash.
yeah,
So anyway, but we have seen, right, never let a good crisis go to waste. And so in China, they've been collecting all the cash and burning it.
yeah,
And I could easily see what you're saying, where they say, hey, cash is dirty. It creates, health problems, and just take it off the street.
yeah.
But here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
And this is what the guy from Credit Suisse was saying. I pulled it up so I could quote it directly because I had a picture of it. But he said, attention starts to turn to alternative currency regimes, whether gold or digital or all of the above. So he said he said this is done, and that's what's going to happen next. But here's the thing: money. No one's going to accept a fake fiat money again. So what happens is confidence has been lost. And I think, like I said, in 1971, they severed the gold tie, but most people don't realize that. Most people weren't paying attention. The dollar kind of looked the same, but they changed at the top where it says Federal Reserve note now. But most people didn't realize there was this whole, basically this bait and switch, if you want to call it that. And confidence has been losing. And once this money implodes, there will be no confidence left. And I made a video on my YouTube channel just a couple of weeks ago. I said how gold gets to 50,000. And I basically made this case how when the money explodes, no one's going to have confidence anymore. Yeah. The only way they're going to get confidence back is to back it to something. So think about this, right? Like in Venezuela, how come their money is worthless? Why is their money littered all through the streets and nobody even bothers to pick it up?
Yeah.
Because nobody trusts it. There's no confidence. What about Argentina? Why do they have 200% inflation, right? And so the only reason the U.S. hasn't done that yet is because it's the reserve status and it hasn't blown up yet. But once it does, no one's going to accept fake money anymore. It's going to have to be backed by something.
Yeah. Now, hold. I thought we got a question or a call here. Let's see if we can get this answered. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name is Tim. I'm from Wisconsin.
Tim from Wisconsin. What's on your mind? What question or thought you want to share with us?
The quick thing is that I've seen so many commercials for the Army National Guards are trying to get so many people on that. So you say there might not be enough people on the military, but they're hiring all these people that are just like everyday people for the Army National Guard. From the commercials I've seen, that I think they're going to put these people on the front lines, and there's going to be, I think, more enough people to maybe, to do what they're trying to do, I guess.
Yeah. So I haven't seen any of those advertisements, but no doubt that the question would be, if they try to put boots on the ground here, will there be enough people? And then will, true patriotic Americans actually obey orders? Because my concern would be that, they're just like us. And so if they see the majority of people struggling, I don't really see them being willing and able to, take orders to the point where they are, terrorizing their own citizens, terrorizing their own brothers and sisters. But once again, it's happened before, so I ain't no telling.
Well, and to bring
sounds great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for calling in.
And to bring your tinfoil hat back out, right? That's why you've seen a lot, over the last decade. And you talked about the militarizing and police forces and the exercises and whatnot, is that they would probably bring in foreign soldiers to police that because of the exact same reason like you're talking about.
Yeah. Somebody's one of the callers a while back shared a post about how the UN was looking to hire. Like, so they were actually, the United Nations was looking to hire for some of the job openings here. And some of the verbiage mentioned that they were actually sending UN troops and whatever here. So they might be here already. I don't know, but I can see like that. I can see stuff like that happen. But I think Americans, I think we would probably go to a civil war style clash before people just bow down and take orders, because I think there's a good portion of the population is ready to revolt. Like, I really believe that there's more than enough ready to take to the streets anyway, because they just pissed. But
I just hope it doesn't come to that. Like I said, if everybody could just comply and just stay home, maybe it can all be avoided, because that ain't going to be good for anybody.
Yeah, it will not. It will not either. So I want to, as we get ready to dial back, I want to be respectful of your time. the conventional financial instruments, 401ks, pensions, retirements, all that right now is being questioned. A lot of people are scared and concerned, and we're going to have a lot of people looking to get out right now as they're trying to pump up. What are your thoughts on that? Some people be able to get out, and what are your thoughts on how this retirement paradigm will unfold?
Well, first of all, like a 401k or whatever, that's just like a vehicle. Inside that 401k are individual stocks and bonds, et cetera. So you need to kind of like look past your 401k and look at what's inside of it. That being said, one of the guys that I really respect and follow, Raoul Paul from Real Vision, he tweeted today that he's out of everything. He's out of no equities, no bonds, no nothing. Like he's out. So that's somebody who's way more respected and way more knowledgeable and way more experienced than I am. And that's what he's saying. I think, what happens is that Wall Street, Donald Trump, the Fed, whoever, the government, they need your money in the market. And they're going to tell you everything they can for you to keep your money in the market. Yeah. And what they're going to tell you is that, well, the market always returns 8%. And if you have a long enough time horizon, you just ride it through. Yes, historically that has worked. But that doesn't mean, and any investor will tell you that past performance is no guarantee of future. Right. And so I don't believe that the future is going to be like the past. We are breaking. We're breaking. And so as I already gave that example, how in the last 50 years, since we got off the gold standard, the markets keep trying to deleverage and we pump it back up and deleverage and pump it back up and deleverage and pump it back up. That's like if you were going broke and, okay, well, I'll use this credit card and now I'm going broke, so I'll use this credit card, and I'm going broke, I'll use this credit card, and I'm going broke, so I'll get a home equity line. But when all that runs out, you're out. And that's basically where we're at right now. Yeah. So I don't know if this bubble is going to be reinflated.
I agree.
Yeah, and as the president of Credit Suisse is saying, like, when we come out of this, it's going to be a whole new financial system.
I agree. We got let's take our last call here, Mark, and then we'll dial back. Hello, caller. What's your name and where you calling from? And what's in your mind?
Hey, Mike. This is Carlos from Miami.
How you doing, my friend?
Just want to get your opinion on what you think about the IMF coming in and doing some SDRs.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
What do you guys think about the IMF coming in and doing SDRs and picking up a new world order?
IMF and SDR as a new world order. I believe that was part of the equation, but at this point, I'm not sure where their firepower will be coming from to help all these central banks. So I don't know if that's going to be a part of the game plan these days. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I think there is something to what he's saying, and I kind of talked about this in that video I did on the YouTube channel talking about gold getting to 50,000. So what happens is the SDRs are special drawing rights. So it's a basket of currencies. It's kind of like what Facebook was trying to do. So basically, they say, okay, so much US dollars, so much of each currency makes up a basket. So instead of, and we already saw, the Bank of England calling for this in the dollar, get rid of the dollar, and we need to have a global dollar. So basically, you take an SDR that represents all the currencies, you make it 20% gold back, and then you digitize it. And that's the new currency. So now every currency has a percentage in the new currency, but instead of having dollars and euros and yen and whatever, you just have one currency, and it represents by a percentage, and it should be backed, 20%, 10%, 50% backed by gold. And I think that's probably the most likely.
Yeah. Caller, appreciate you for calling and sharing that thought, my friend.
Yep, thank you, Dave.
All right. So with that, I think if it's Western led, the IMF being a Western entity, I believe that was something that they will be willing to accept. But for some reason, as I mentioned, I don't know if we talked about this before, but I don't think China and Russia really want to continue to play the Western game. And so I'm a big believer that whatever the next paradigm will be, it will be Eastern led. And we don't know the official numbers of what's sitting in the Chinese vaults, but I believe it's a lot more than 8,000 tons that we're supposed to have in Fort Knox. And so I'd imagine whatever game is going to be next, I don't think the U.S. will have a major role in it. That's why a part of what I'm thinking, if I was to put this on, I still see a war coming because our president keeps using the words Chinese virus. Like, why did he all of a sudden change the narrative from Corona, COVID?
Well, that's a deeper conversation. And if we want to dive into that just for a minute, but I think everyone had already come to the conclusion that China would take us over at some point. Here in California, my daughter goes to a Spanish immersion school. Everyone's saying, no, you should have them learn Mandarin because, China. So we already kind of came to that foregone conclusion. The problem, though, is that China was starting to kind of move a little bit away from communism, a little bit more capitalistic, if you will. But since President Xi has been there, they are full-blown communist again. They got 1 million Uyghurs locked up in concentration camps, organ harvesting, racial cleansing. They're doing all that. I mean, it's as bad as it gets. And to imagine living under that, I mean, I can't see anything worse. So I'm not happy with that foregone conclusion that we're giving up to China. That being said, we are in a dangerous situation. And I think we have never realized how bad it really was until now. Like Trump knew he was been trying to get us back out of this, but like, holy crap, you mean that like we can't go to war with China because 90% of our antibiotics come from them? And they're threatening to withhold our antibiotics right now? Oh, you mean we can't even go to war with them because all the parts and equipment that the military needs actually comes from China? It's not even made in the US? Oh, like what? Right? So that's really bad. But what's also worse, and back to your Trump China virus thing, is that as bad as whatever our government may be, the Chinese government's, however much worse. And the virus came from Wuhan. It's the Wuhan virus. But China is making the United States, the media and the politicians bow down to them, right? And so we know this. We've seen it with Joe Biden, where Joe Biden's now saying, no, it's not Chinese, and saying Wuhan virus is what are they? It's racist and all these things, right? It came from there. It's typical that you name a virus from where it came from. So anyway, now China is spreading propaganda that the U.S. is actually the one that caused it, when they in fact caused it. And they caused the world great harm because they didn't report it and this and that, right? So I think Trump's comment is just pushing back on that. And, one of the things that I've never liked about Trump is that he's just so inflammatory. Like sometimes you just got to know when to just shut your mouth, right? That being said, I don't know how tuned in you are to this, but, with the whole Ukraine and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden thing, right? But like Joe Biden went on Air Force 2 to China to crack down on them. He took his son, Hunter Biden, with him. His son, Hunter Biden, is a crackhead. Look him up on Google, multiple run-ins and arrests, whatever. He's not qualified for anything, not even to hold a job, right? He went on Air Force 2 on taxpayer money with his dad to crack down on China. When they came home on Air Force 2, we were soft on China. In addition, Hunter Biden came home with hundreds of billions of dollars of People's Bank of China money, the first time they've ever invested into a U.S. hedge fund ever. And they gave it to him, and he's the president of it. And guess where all that money went? Into all the U.S. weapon technology companies. So the PBOC sent Hunter Biden home with the money, and they bought all our technology. His dad, obviously part of that. And so what's interesting is Joe Biden has been coming strongly out talking about the virus and saying that it's COVID and it's not fair to call it Chinese and don't mention China. Like he's been really big on that. And so Donald Trump is taking the opposite stance and going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, what are you talking about? It came from China. Yeah. And so, although yes, it's a little bit inflammatory, someone has to say it. Yeah. Right.
Now, like, so I got this hat here. So I've mentioned before, I've gone way out there, and I'm like, we're told that ground zero happened to be in Wuhan, but it's one of those things that we have stories saying that there's a laboratory, whatever. But then there's also other alternatives out there where some people showing me documentation that Chapel Hill had in their laboratory some SARS-CoV strand viruses that they've been working with. And so you got the Events 201 where Bill Gates has been working on some depopulation type thing. So we're told one thing, and it's usually 10 years after the fact that we find out the truth, such as 9/11. We were told that the people came from, they were bin Laden's boys, but yet we went to Saudi Arabia, we went to Iraq. And so bin Laden was in Afghanistan. So we've been told a lot, and it's usually 10 years after the fact. But by that time, most people don't really give a damn anyway. So,
well, what I thought was super interesting, and again, looking at these dots, I mean, they're making us crazy. Like I tell people, like, we grew up watching like detective shows and murder mysteries on TV. I mean, that's how we think. And like they arrested.
Where's MacGyver? Where's MacGyver when you need him?
Yeah, but like they arrested the professor from Harvard, getting on a plane with biosamples and Chinese nationals.
Yeah.
They found out he's been getting paid millions of dollars. By who? Who was he getting paid by? The Wuhan Institute of Technology. Okay. Then President Xi comes out and makes an address to the nation, and he says, we are revamping our security protocols at our level 1 biofacilities. Well, why are they revamping the security protocols? Because they had a problem. Well, how many level 1 biofacilities are there? There's one. Guess where they are? Wuhan. So it's like, I mean, maybe that's just coincidence.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a lot of dots.
Yes, it is. But so, Mark, we're going to get ready to dial back, man. I appreciate you taking time to join me here on RTD. And for those that may not know, let me go ahead and put your channel up on here so people can find out where they can stay in tune with what you got going on. And so, Mark, any last thoughts you want to leave us with? And I'm going to put this on the screen so people can see where they can find you at. But any last thoughts you want to leave us with? Hopefully, can have you come back again and join us to share some of your thoughts and analysis. But any last thoughts you want to leave us with?
Yeah. So last thoughts are just, like I said, I don't want to bow down and I don't want to give in, but I just kind of encourage people to take care of themselves and their family and just try to eradicate this as quickly as possible. And that means social distancing. On top of that, you need to learn how to make money from home. And so you need to figure that out. And if that means learning a new skill, then learn a new skill, right? Like watch YouTube videos and learn how to do Facebook ads, or watch YouTube videos and learn how to do photo editing or video editing, right? So I encourage everyone to learn a new skill, make money. And as far as investing money right now, the dollars, that seems to be the place to be. And be super careful.
Yeah, I agree. So once again, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us for this live stream. If you've enjoyed this back and forth, just don't be afraid to donate a thumbs up beneath here. Share this information. Make sure you guys go check out Mark Moss on YouTube. And then other than that, Mark, looking forward to staying in touch and having you back on sooner than later and getting your thoughts and seeing how this plays out. And we'll go from there. So thanks for joining me on RTD.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.